100 days in office for any president is a time where they do analyze his achievement and also what he has not gotten right as a president. But for the president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it's a time where he is awaiting whether he is victorious in the court today, as it happened to be the judgment day for all the presidential candidates that have submitted their petition against the president. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we will be keeping you updated with all of these and many other stories in the paper. I will be doing this together with Rachel Tansey. Good morning.
Morning,
Rachel.
Sally.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Anticipating what the tribunal will be today,
Yes.
happening to be the judgment day. So our
True.
fingers are crossed. We hope very soon the court will be open and then people will be tripping in already,
Yes.
sitting and then waiting for what the judgment will be like. So we hope to see what it will be, the outcome. We'll be going straight into the paper, starting with Nigerian News Direct.
Presidential election, Nigerians open viewing centers, anticipate tribunal judgment. Nigeria to host Africa Internet Governance Forum 2023 in Abuja. The big story, subsidy removal. We played politics with Occupy Nigeria protests in 2012. A statement coming from Fayemi. And the writer under the story, disruption hit banks' power supply as NLC embarks on strike. Beneficiaries of subsidy out to frustrate Tinubu's policies. A statement coming from the Vice President Shetima. Federal government meets with TUC, sets 2 weeks deadline to resolve labor demands. More details can be found on page 21. Nigeria targets 5.5 billion cubic feet gas production output by 2030, coming from the minister. NAFDAC seeks cooperation of freight forwarders clearing agents to boost Nigeria's food export. Court sentences 19-year-old, 3 others to jail for internet fraud in Benin. More details can be found on page 22. And at the downside of the paper, here Insurance Group posts 20 billion naira in revenue for the financial year of 2022. Cements position as Nigeria's fastest growing insurance group. More details can be found on page 22, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
A New Telegraph newspaper coming from the CBN. Direct remittance to Nigeria fell by 18.9% to $241.2 billion. You can find more detail on the front page and on page 3. And on VAT, federal government to earn 141.8 billion naira from diesel import in the fourth quarter of 2023. More of that business story can be found on page 17. And on the issue of gas flaring, reps query IOC for underpaying penalty with the right of palliative diversion. DSS arrests Nasarawa emergency management officials. You can find more on page 6 and 31. Ahead today's judgment, FHQ strengthened deployment nationwide, where we have the IGP redeploy Frank Imban, order DIGs with immediate effect. You can find more on page 2, 4, and 6. Jill Biden tests positive for COVID, president negative, coming from the White House. That's on the international level. And on the issue of Guba poll, INEC redeploys 2 reg appoint Alumeku IVEC chair. You can find that on page 6. The big story for New Telegraph here says the rising crude price, fuel pump price may hit 800 naira without government intervention, coming from Ipman. Says the fuel scarcity looms in eastern Nigeria. Oil prices rise above $90 per barrel. Yesterday we saw it at 89, and then we're seeing today it's at 90. Market experts predict oil price to hit $100, so you can do well to find more of that on page 2. And on alleged theft and forgery, general to address court martial today. You can find that from page 2 of the paper. Edo Deputy Governor Shaibu withdraw court case against Obaseki and others. Former NNPP National Chair Akali resigns, says the crisis has no end. More can be found on page 30. Another financial year for 2022, Hearst Insurance Group posts 20 billion naira in revenue. And on the fuel subsidy, we played politics with 2012 Occupy Nigeria. Coming from Fayemi, we have few writers following that story. You can do out to read more of that. And then on poor compliance, MER, the NLC warning strike, aviation workers, some banks snub the directive, poor electricity workers and others comply. You can find more of that on page 7 and 28. Here we are having the picture story where we can see the president of Nigeria during the summit in India yesterday. So you can do out to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Blueprint newspaper, security beef up as Presidential Election Tribunal rules today. Gridlock at Gwagwalada Yanya Zuba Buhari checkpoint. Tension as PDP resorts to prayer assures of victory. Nigerians have right to protest if dissatisfied. Statement coming from Labour Party. You can find more details on page 6. Tinubu's 100-day fuel subsidy removal, unification of exchange rate averted economic catastrophe. Statement coming from the federal government. We have Nigeria not yet a nation, says Jonathan. And on 2024 Hajj being expensive, pilgrims to deposit 4.5 million naira minimum, that is ahead of the 2024 Hajj. You can find more details on page 13. Heirs Insurance Group posts 20 billion naira revenue in 2022. You can find more details on page 22. And we have a big portion of the front page of the Blueprint newspaper dedicated to congratulating the president for his 100 days in office. This is coming from Honorable Dr. Olubumi Tunji Ojo, the Minister of Interior. And that's all news on Blueprint newspaper.
Then we have unsettled forest backlog will be cleared in 2 weeks, coming from the CBN. Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, Labour Party alert on ploy to twist the judgment, where you can do out to start reading the story on the front page and continue more. The big story, 2012 fuel subsidy protest was mere politics, coming from Fayemi. Founding fathers didn't integrate us into nation, says Jonathan. You can start reading the story on the front page and see more about what the former governor of Ekiti State have to say about the protest of 2012. On the Presidential Tribunal judgment, PDP goes spiritual, seek God's face. You can find more on page 6. Tinubu's 100 days in office, a display of courage, says Minister. And Shaitima is saying our economic policy is already yielding results. You can find on page 6. Shaibu retraces step, withdraws suit against Obaseki, pledges his loyalty. You can find on page 7. Also here we are having civil society vow to monitor disbursement of the 5 billion naira palliative in states. And also we have workers comply with the NLC warning strike, desert offices. Labour described the first day of strike a resounding success, so you can find more of the story in the paper. We're having the picture story of the 3 main contenders, where we're seeing a caption on top saying Judgment Day. So of course today it's a judgment day for them. You get to know their fate. Who is the president, and then who is the court saying actually won? Rachel, quite a lot.
Yes.
Even though we know the court are yet to say anything about this, but of course quite some captions on the papers are quite they get you, crack you up to laugh. Like we're seeing PDP going spiritual about all of these things. Of course I think it's a time where their fate right now lies in the hand of the judges, and so they definitely have to pray and seek God that the judges will do the right thing, just like we did yesterday. But I just hope, just like we said, that the judge will do the right thing. Because I kept saying the fact that I look forward to a time that after an election, we don't need to go to a court, because we'll see that this is what the people want and this is what they are getting. But for each time we go to court, we're beginning to reduce the power of the people. How comes are we saying that the court of just merely about how many judges will decide the fate of over 2 million Nigerians? It's not fair. But then we are hoping that they will do the right thing, and then this will serve as a lesson to all of us Nigerians to do the right thing. Because believe me, Rachel, if the right thing was done, we'll not be where we are right now. Resources have been pushed into this tribunal to be sure that they do the right thing. And the eyes of the entire world is actually on Nigeria right now.
Yes.
The eyes was when we're doing an election, because it will set the pace for other African countries, because we tend to be like the father holding the rest of the African
Yes.
countries because of our population. But we're looking forward to see what will be the judge today. We're seeing Nigerians are taking advantage of that, having viewing centers
Yeah.
for those that do not have
to
to serve at home.
yes.
So it's quite funny, but then I know it's a mixed reaction coming from Nigerians. But our fingers are crossed. Very soon it will be on the live on air for everybody to see. So we hope that everybody would just be positive. But my fear is let nobody take this too hard, and then at the end of the day we see breaking of properties, and then leading to maybe hoodlums taking advantage of the entire thing. Because right now NLC is on strike, so already there's tension going on. So we hope that Nigerians will be calm, be stable, even if it doesn't favor you. Just be calm, and then we hope that we'll learn from this and then do the right thing next time.
Kesela, I keep saying, even in a free and fair election, your candidate won't always emerge the winner. And that is the same mentality that I want Nigerians to have concerning the verdict for today. That regardless of what the outcome might be of the ruling by the judge today concerning the tribunal, you should know that what you think should be the outcome doesn't necessarily have to be. And it doesn't take away the fact that these judges were sincere and they took their job seriously, because it wasn't only them, but there was also a jury attached to this tribunal. So it's more than one head deciding the fate of Nigeria, in as much as they are few compared to the millions of our population. But we want to believe that, putting all things into consideration, whatever the tribunal will announce today is the verdict, and as Nigerians we should take it, because in the end, if Tinubu is still declared as the president, it's not favorable for a lot of people. If Atiku should be declared as the president, it won't favor a lot of people. If Labour Party should be declared as the winner of the 2023 election, it won't favor a lot of people. So regardless of what the outcome is, be it fair or biased, your candidate won't always win. Whatever is the outcome out there won't sit well with everybody. So with that in mind, don't create chaos out there. Accept it as it is, and let's have a peaceful Nigeria, because in the end, the aim is to be able to have balance in the country, so that the rightful person will be able to now focus as the president of the country and be able to put things in place, and then let's see where we go. Because in the end, it doesn't matter who is the president, it's all about Nigeria, because this president will come and go, but the country remain. So let's put ourselves in the position where it's all about wanting the best for the country, that whatever be the verdict today, it is in line with helping Nigeria grow, and that should be what should be in the mind of everybody. But by the time you decide to allow yourself to be used for violence or to create some kind of chaos, is still backwardness, because then you are adding to this insecurity in the country as it is. So you're doing nobody any good with such action. So yes, we'll wait and see. And of course, for those at the viewing center, I mean, it's just be, I just hope there's no fight breaking out there, because it's not, I can imagine a football situation. This one, and Nigerians are angry. It won't be mere banter. It's like the future of Nigeria. So I just hope that fights don't break out in these viewing centers.
That's our desire for Nigerians to remain calm. Well, that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, Nigeria orders need $500 billion to cushion impact of climate change, a statement coming from the United Nations. The big story: NLC strike cripples economic activities nationwide. Government office shut, banks, market, transportation affected. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. Wike vows to recover 34 billion naira owed FCTA. 13 distress calls lead to arrest of 54 criminals coming from the army. You can find more details of these arrests on page 4. Abia will not celebrate first 100 days, says commissioner. And on Edo Reef, Deputy Governor Bokuls withdraws suit against Obaseki. At the downside of the paper, Tinubu arrives India, woos Hinduja Group for investment. More details can be found on page is at the back page of the paper, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
Richard, I wish to just turn a blind eye to this NLC, but I can't because I was affected. There was no light in my house yesterday.
True.
As a result of that, and I know
Yes.
quite a number of Nigerians, but that's just one sector that has been crippled.
Hmm.
We've seen the picture story in the front of the Daily Times. You see
Yeah.
how the Kaduna Secretariat has been deserted because workers are not there. In fact, even in Plateau State, going brown, you realize that quite a number of offices were being deserted. The Secretariat, the various sectors, down to even education,
Yeah.
offices were being deserted because NLC is actually taking this to heart. And we remember already on the paper, TUC are giving the federal government ultimatum of 2 weeks to be able to rectify this. But what I'm concerned is the fact that in as much as Labour is pushing its demand to the government, at the end of the day, the citizens are still going to be affected. So imagine going to the bank. There will be no banker to attend to you. Some banks. There will be no light in some part of the country. Some parts, even though other people enjoyed light yesterday, while others did not enjoy light. But then I'm just hoping that these are just few sectors that will be crippled. And then, believe you me, Rachel, whether we like it or not, we'll be losing money as a result of this. So I'm just hoping that let us look for a way to rectify issues. We don't always have to resolve to strike, even though I know this strike is long overdue. It should have happened long before now, but it's coming now. So better late than never. But then we just hope that due processes will be followed in various states. Things will be put in place that we don't have to hear this and that. We're seeing even on the paper, CSO are saying that they're going to observe the 5 billion that were sent to states to be sure that everybody is actually getting, even though very few states have been captured on the paper to have actually shared something, even though not everybody is going to get eventually. So, of course, just like you said, with what is happening in the tribunal right now, attentions are divided as it is presently. The president is trying to attend a summit in India. He's not even in the country presently, so definitely it will be his vice that will be there in the court. So we just hope that we'll put our heads together, better ways to rectify things, because already we're having it till date. I'm yet to hear resident doctors are not yet back. So our hospitals are still locked as it is presently. So we're seeing that key sectors are being crippled as a result of negligence coming from some people that refuse to do what they are supposed to do. So our fingers are crossed. We hope that today is the second day for the warning strike. So that means if nothing comes up, there's going to be possibilities nationwide strike eventually, even though TUC are giving the government ultimatum. So our fingers are crossed, and we hope that the right things will be done so workers can get back to work and every other sector can get working, because there's a lot of work to be done as it is present.
Yes, Ellie, and this is to the government. If you don't want to be losing money because of the ongoing strike, then you should do what will warrant that you are no longer losing money, because in the end, yes, it is going to affect the economy, because as little as it might seem the activities going in the country, there are people who would want to go and make one registration or another in the local government, and they can't do that. And whether we like it or not, these are means in which the local government, the state government, do generate revenue, and we are talking about every state with millions and millions of populations, regardless of how small it is. So in various ways, yes, the government is going to be losing money as a result of strike, and then now it all goes back again to the government, because this is how Labour wants you to listen to them. So if you don't want to lose more money, then you should call up the strike and then act drastically, because what they're asking for is very doable by the government, and that is the part that is sad concerning everything that is happening. Why is the palliative taking forever to roll out? What is the problem? If you have this money at your disposal to be able to give, what about the money that we are being able to save as a result of the fuel subsidy? I'm not saying we should remove fuel subsidy and eat it back with our mouth, no, but then the government of Nigeria are in position, they can be able to give this palliative. Is not something way out of their reach. So the question is, why are you delaying? Do you prefer to lose more money in your economy, or to be able to start rolling out this palliative? So let them do the needful, and let's hope that it doesn't linger for long.
Well, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper, starting with the big story there. We have subsidy returns as federal government leverages NNPC to manage the market stock. Here we're seeing factors that influences Nigeria's petrol price. We're seeing the cost of crude oil, and then we're seeing our quota coming from OPEC, our tax when we pay, then the cost of insurances, and then we're having about 19.5% distribution and marketers margin. The cost of free and insurance about 7.6%. So quite a lot of factors that are actually influencing that. So you can do well, grab the paper and read more detail of the factors influencing the prices of petrol in the market presently. Labour throws Abuja Kaduna just into darkness as electricity grid wobbles to 2,000 megawatts. Wow. You can find more of that on page 2. Police on red alert as Nigerians await tribunal ruling on presidential election. You can find out on page 6. Oyo Assembly approves Makende's request to access 50 billion naira loan facility. After 17 billion naira, Bauchi governor scores state low on education and blames the civil servant. Now, this is a question to the governor. What is he hoping to do to resurrect and make sure that the state is doing more? Because this is a state that has been affected by quite a number of things, ranging from flood, Rachel, ranging to unemployment, ranging to even education. Is you can actually score them part of the state that a lot are happening, and then happens to be the gateway to the northeast. So any other thing that has to happen from the northeast you have to come through Bauchi state. So I think this should be a state that should actually capture the eyes of the nation. So more needs to go into it. Let's look at what can be done for civil servants so that they can actually have the morale. Because believe you me, when you don't give them the morale, they will not work because they feel the state is not giving them anything. So we hope that even after the 17 billion naira that the governor is giving, more will go into education and also civil servants so they can do their work as expected. Campaigners will call for tax on wealth as Nigeria attend G20 meeting. You can find more of that on page 3. EFCC anti-graft war when Hunter becomes the game. You want to know what that means? Do well to read that news analysis on page 4. Strike flops in Lagos as workers and banks shun the NLC. You can find that on page 2. And that is all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, our founding fathers won independence, failed to build a nation. A statement coming from the former president of the country, Goodluck Jonathan. NNPP crisis deepens as faction expels Konkoso. APC's past rejection of fuel subsidy removal was political. A statement coming from Fayemi. And on presidential poll, the 4 men woman who will decide fate of Tinubu Atiku Obi today. Can find more details on page 15. And the big story on the paper, strike halts activities in rivers Osun, Edo, Kano, Kaduna and Cross River. The writer under the story records partial compliance in Lagos, Abuja, Ogun, Delta, Ekiti and Kebbi. Power disruption looms as workers shut down Oshobo Transmission Company. Banks caught short as Anambra NLC joins strike. Strike stalls election tribunal ruling in Edo, commercial activities and others. Day 1 met our objective. A statement coming from Majayaro at day 2 to send stronger signals. You can find more details on page 5. Despite slight improvement, reign of terror continues. This is still on Tinubu's 100 days in office. You can find more details of this statement on page 12 and 13 of Vanguard newspaper. Justice Odili's pre-judgment remarks worrisome. A statement coming from the Labour Party and still on the petition tribunal. Fuel subsidy interest fighting us. A statement coming from Shetima. Shaibu withdraws suit against Obaseki and others. We have a column on page 16 by Baba Ahmed, one by Affair Babalola on page 22, and also on page 38 for sports saying Babayaro Blast NFF Technical Committee. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
For the Leadership newspaper 2023 polls, 5 judges decide Tinubu Atiku Obi's fate today. We have the picture of the 5 judges, so you commit them in your prayers as they do the right thing. Otetola launched Sanwo-Olu over completion of the Lagos Blue Raid. You can find more on the front page and on page 7. And what's trending on the paper, NLC shut down banks in Rivers over strike. Nigeria's tax revenue grows by 17% to 3.48 trillion naira in 6 months. That's on numbers. You can find both on page 2. NNPP expel Kwankwaso ex-chairman Alkali dumps the party. You can find that on page 4. Labour strikes suffer partial compliance over cracks in the union, where we have the writer saying offices and banks shut in Abuja, Bayelsa and Kano. Then action and breach of due process, says the state chairman. And also we are having the SSG office budget 108 million naira to organize presidential media chats. Edo Deputy Governor withdraws his suit against Obaseki, the Governor of Edo State. New travel restriction for non-UK citizens. You want to know what they are? Do well to read that on page 7. We're having the picture stories here where we see NLC warning nationwide strike over the first subsidy removal in Abuja, Kaduna, Lagos, Bayelsa yesterday. And we've seen picture stories of them in the various places. We have that of Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom, Abuja and Lagos on the front page. So you can do or grab the leadership and read more stories of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, NLC strike, banks, court, port office shut, partial compliance in some states, aviation unions opt out. Tight security as court delivers presidential election verdict today. Television stations set up equipment for live broadcast. We have Heirs Assurance Group post 20 billion naira in revenue for the financial year of 2022. IGP orders probe of cadet officers dead at police academy. Ekiti residents cry for help as gunmen abduct 4 farmers 5 days after killing one. One kill as truck driver task force clash in Lagos. You can find more details on page 5. At the downside of the paper, we played mere politics with protests against fuel subsidy removal in 2012. Statement coming from Fahimi. And federal government cancels INTELS Polytech monopoly, engages 4 new firms. You can find more details of that on page 6. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Alright, let's take our breath, catch it, let you chew the stories as we take this break, and when we come back, we'll open the phone lines and continue with the paper analysis. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Welcome back. It's still the Dailies on Airport Television, and before we went on break, we're looking at quite a number of stories. What Fayemi have to say about the 2012 protest on fuel subsidy. Today being the judgment day, where the tribunal will actually decide who actually won during the February 25th presidential election. Now, quite a number of stories that have been captured in the paper. So at this moment, our number is displayed on your screen. Do well to call us. We'd love to hear what your contribution is concerning any of the story that is of interest to you. I still have Rachel at the end of the minute. Thanks so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us. Alright, please to our viewers, remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, and then also try to summarize your point at least in a minute so we can get what you have to say and other callers can get to call in too. Thank you so much. Let's take a look at this day newspaper. Otitola commends Sanwo-Olu on the successful completion of Lagos Blue Rail, with the rider call on Lagosians to continue to support the governor in his quest to deliver more world-class infrastructure for benefit of the people. You can start reading it on the front page and continue on page 39. And on the issue of Tinubu 100 days in office, strong start, stronger challenges. What does that mean? You can do well to read that on page 5. We're still having congratulations throbbing in for the president on the front page of the paper, and that's all in this day newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, CBN to clear $10 billion forest backlog in 2 weeks. Atedola extols Sanwo-Olu on light blue rail takeoff. You can find more details on page 3. The big story on the Nation newspaper, I will break all barriers for investors, Tinubu assures. Billionaire Indian businessman OK's automobile manufacturing deal with Nigeria. You can find more details on page 2. We have a congratulation coming from Senator Abubakar Yari, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
Alright, let's take a look at the Daily Sun newspaper. NLC warning strike paralyzed government secretariat, hospital, banks, and others. You can find more on page 6. The big caption for the Daily Sun says Judgment Day. Anxiety, security alert in Abuja's tribunal decide Tinubu Atiku Obi's fate. IGP deploys 7 DIGs, 5 AIGs, riot police to venue across the FCT. More can be found on page 6. Occupying Nigerian protests in 2012 induced by politics coming from Fayemi. Jonathan blames Nigerian war on lack of national integration. You can find more of that on page 28. And quite a number of people, fortunately, Rachel, have been talking about the 2012 protests that took place then during the Jonathan administration on when the fuel subsidy was supposed to be removed. And here we're seeing Fayemi saying it was all politics, because a lot of Nigerians, I remember interaction on the streets and everywhere when you get to listen to people's view. They said the right time for that first subsidy to be removed would have been in 2012, because then the economy was a bit stable and then things was better. People would have actually been able to cope. But right now the economy is actually really on red. Presently our debt profile is almost 40 trillion naira as it is presently. So quite a number of things have actually made, and then even though the first subsidy was not removed in 2012, it had to be removed somehow, because we're seeing the VP even saying on the paper that some people that are benefiting from it are the ones frustrating the effort presently right now. But just like I keep saying, it's better late than never. But I hope that in as much as we've removed this should be an eye-opener for us. Let's get our refinery functioning. Because for any economy to strive, we have to look into doing things inwardly. We're tired of always exporting, importing, and then we're not exporting anything at the end of the day. Meanwhile, we have all that it takes to do that here. We have all that it takes to refine our crude oil here, have it back here, make whatever we need to make here. So, well, just like I said, it's better late than never, but we hope that these have served as a lesson for us.
Of course,
when we need to do something, let us do it then and not allow politics to merge into governance and policies that will benefit the nation in the long run.
And I believe this is an eye-opener for Nigerians, that they disappointed the 2012 administration of Goodluck Jonathan, because as a country, not only do we have rights and duties, but when a government is bringing out policies, you are supposed to be in charge of making sure that you give the government support. I know we always put ourselves in a position that we do not affect the decisions that happen in a country, but this clearly shows that we also have some power in controlling what happens, and one way is by showing support to the government of an administration, and by our silence and moving slowly with what is going on with this administration. We don't have to talk and say we support. Our silence and going on with what is happening shows support for what is going concerning the subsidy removal. However, we were outspoken in 2012 concerning the subsidy removal, and we were talking about a period of time where our exchange rate was better and we didn't have inflation rising as it was now, because even before the subsidy removal, before the floating of our currency, we had a currency that was very weak, that kept on depreciating week on week. That was what was happening. And even without the subsidy removal, we had our fuel pump prices going high, we had inflation at its peak, we had the standard of living going high. So 2012 would have been a perfect time because we had a more stable economy at that time, because even if the dollar was going up, we weren't seeing it monthly. It took a long period of time. Inflation wasn't as high as it is now. So, but yes, I mean, this is an eye-opener, and I know there is a lot of regret for people who were the ones who championed the protests concerning not removing the fuel subsidy at that time. And this is where regret step in, because we'll be saying, had we known, we would have just stick with the subsidy removal at then, and we would have definitely seen a better economy. Because one thing with the administration at that time, everything that was human empowerment, they took it seriously. So we, at that time, we had an administration that we wouldn't be struggling with seeing palliatives by now, because when it came to the human angle, they did not relax at that period of time.
Well, our fingers are crossed, just like we said. These are lessons, so
Yes.
what we need to do, let's do it when we had opportunity to. Still on Daily Sun newspaper, CBN to clear forest backlogs in 2 weeks, asks the BDCs to adopt technology. Coming from Tinubu, I will remove bottleneck militant against ease of doing businesses, and then Shetima say our policies already yielding results. You can find on page 27. Wike threatened to revoke land approval over 34 billion naira ground rent. You can find on page 27. And we have IBAN SNB condemn Rivers Governor demolition of AIT facility. You can find more on page 29. Second Abuja runway construction commences next week. Ready in 12 months, coming from Kiamo. You can find that on page 25. Downside of the paper, federal government expert brainstorm on African climate, clean energy in Abuja. You can find more on page 26. And that's all on the Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, CBN to clear $10 billion FX backlog in 2 weeks. Minister of Interior vows to clear passport backlog in 2 weeks. Also, you can find more details on page 8. The big story, presidential election wait is over as tribunal delivers judgment. Tinubu Atiku Obi to no fake judgment to be televised live. Military police warn troublemakers. See African countries where elections were upturned. More details can be found on page 2. Brent crude hits $89 per barrel first time in 10 months. IGP deploys newly promoted DIGs. AIGs tax them on professionalism, people-centric policing. You can find more details on page 8. Still on the Matrix newspaper, Edo Deputy Governor Shaibu withdraws suit against Obaseki. Tinubu arrives India for G20 summit. Nigeria suffers 150 crude oil theft cases in 1 week. You can find more details on page 7, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
For the Voice of Liberty, 2-day NLC strike, federal government, TUC agree on 2 weeks to resolve some labor issues. For election tribunal, we expect nothing than victory, Atiku speaks ahead of today's judgment. And Kuka urges Nigerians don't allow judiciary to interfere in our nation's election again. And I think this is what I said earlier on, Rachel. We shouldn't allow the tribunal to, or the judiciary rather, to always interfere in the nation, because they should be dealing with other things, not always interfering with what civilians should be, doing when it's our civil responsibility. So we hope that we'll take this as a lesson also. Still on the tribunal judgment day, Tinubu convinced he defeated Atiku and Obi won't threaten the judiciary. Presidency says on PEPC ruling. Ahead of the presidential election petitions tribunal ruling, the presidency said President Bola Tinubu does not need to threaten the judiciary because the ex-Lagos governor is convinced he defeated opposition candidate Atiku Abubakar of the PDP and the Peter Obi of the Labour Party in the February 25th presidential election. Well, the judges will decide that. Election petition, why tribunal judgment may not be delivered today, coming from Bulama. You can find more of that, why he have to say that. And then also Tinubu's palliative program worsening Nigerians' hardship. Informal Workers Organization backs the NLC strike. You can find more insight. Peter Obi will win at the tribunal. Labour Party counters Tinubu's claim. Of course, everybody wants his party to win, so we cross our finger of that. And also coming from Rivers, we have the Independent Broadcasting Station condemned demolition of the Dark Communication Building by the state government. You can find more of the story inside the paper, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On Nature News newspaper, starting with the big story, early alerts. Our governors prepared for severe flooding in 12 states and local government areas, and alongside with that we have dead due to flooding in 2012 down to 2022. You can see that according to the statistics by the National Emergency Management Agency, the flooding in 2022 recorded more casualties than 2012. Although the reason for the increase may not have been known, it is necessary for the government to put adequate measures in place to prevent loss of lives and properties in the 2023 predicted flood. So we can see in 2012 we have 363 people who lost their life due to flooding, and also for the year 2022 we are having 662. A bar chart of 5 worst states with comparative 2012 and 2022 figures. Now we're just looking at 5 worst states. We have other states that are not captured on this chart. Still on Nature News, Lagos Governor Deputy embark on inaugural trip of newly unveiled Blue Line Rail. Borno government to plant 1.2 million trees to combat climate change. Farmers raise concerns over inequitable distribution of 1.5 billion naira flood relief funds. UK government pledges 49 million pounds to fight climate change in Africa. More details can be found on page N. NGO provides insights into causes of climate changes, conflicts in Nigeria. Military personnel unearth fresh illegal oil bunkering sites in southern Nigeria. At the downside of the paper, this is for sport. Getting my wife to marry me was difficult. Arteta, the coach of Arsenal, is telling Havertz. You can find more details of that story on page 21, and that's all the news on Nature News.
Looking at the Nature News and what the Borno government is planning to do, I think this should be an initiative for other states as well. Because looking at the climate change we're having, and then even from the bar chart here, even though they said we do not know what is responsible for the increase of rate, but one thing is for sure, the activities of men is actually what is causing that, because the level of water keeps increasing. So of course we see flooding, dams getting very filled, and then you have to look for a way to dredge it, rivers and all of that. But I hope that we're seeing Borno is planning on doing 1.2 million tree planting, which is very commendable, because for those who have traveled through there, you know that they're actually lacking trees. You could see the road very bare and clear. So I think this should also be an initiative for other states to do the same thing. Possibility that when we have more trees, it will be able to help to protect those ozone layer from the activities of men. We see people cutting down the trees often for one reason or the other. You really cannot tell, and then there is no rule, no sanction whatsoever. So I hope we'll have a body that will monitor the planting of the trees. Let us have a body that will make sure the trees that we have standing are not being cut down without any cost reason, especially coming from the government. And that we just hope that we'll do the right thing, because really looking at the lives and properties that have been lost for the flooding, it should serve as a lesson to all of us to do the right thing. Talking about illegal mining that is also causing flood, because whether we like it or not, erosion and washing of land is what is causing that. So we hope that more states will take the lead coming from Borno government and also do the right thing, so we can protect our ozone layer for more terrible things happening.
And Sele, the simple rule behind cutting down a tree is planting another one. Because yes, we need the wood. Of course, we can't say no cutting down trees. It doesn't work like that. But the simple rule behind cutting down trees is, as you're cutting this one down, you're planting another one. And if only people were to do that, we will not be having deforestation as a threat to the ecosystem or climate change. And people also need to be reminded that the reason why we have oxygen is because we have these trees.
True.
They swallow up what we don't need and they give us oxygen what we need. So yes, tree planting is important. This is not only for the government of Borno and every other state that is trying to adopt planting millions of trees, as turns out to be one of the major moves for climate change and making sure deforestation doesn't consume our environment. You should also be planning on planting trees in your houses. Say, I need to have at least 3 trees strategically, not just anyhow, because those trees, their roots can also bring down your houses. So be sure the kind of tree you're planting and what area it is. But then it's very important that we also plant trees. It's not only for the government, but it's important that we make it our duty to help with the climate of Nigeria, because we are seeing that it is not good for us down here so far.
You know, while we were talking, Rachel, I just remember that a lot of animals are going extinct because we're cutting down the trees. I remember back then, there were certain animals I could see that are no longer here. Let's say, for example, the birds. Richard, have you noticed that the number of birds have really drastically dropped down because there are no trees for them to stay, so they keep moving. True. So I think this is another advantage of having the trees, you know. We need the oxygen. These animals need a place, a shelter to stay. So we hope that we'll stop cutting down the trees. Well, let's take a look at the world of business. On Business Day newspaper, British education institution launches $150 million Charterhouse Lagos. You can start reading it on the front page and continue on page 2. The big story: CBN to collect the forex backlog in 2 weeks. Refill JP Morgan debt, increases the FX inflow, fails to leave reserved, and Naira to reserve the increases forex inflow, fails to leave reserves, and Naira. You can find more of that inside the paper. D-Day: Nigerians await tribunal judgment. Judiciary shouldn't interfere with election again. Coming from Bishop Kuka. You can find more of that story on page 30. We have Lagos Airport Terminal shut down, see squeezing businesses. You can find more on page 2. And also we're having Health Insurance Group post 20 billion naira revenue in 2022. We have the picture still showing us the radio house shot during the warning strike by the Nigerian Labour Congress over the petrol subsidy removal in Abuja yesterday. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun, Amuso Nathaniel confirmed Paris 2024 Olympic sports. We have El Ittihad makes world record £250 million offer for Salah. World Cup rigged for Lionel Messi. A statement coming from Louis van Gaal. You can find more details at the back page. And the big story on the paper: Boniface Orban stormed Nigeria as Pizarro storms Uyo. Real Madrid rejected chance to sign Osimhen, opted for Mbappe. Napoli closes door on Super Eagles star Saudi move. You can find more details on page 6. Mbappe to leave 100 million euros PSG banners in gentleman's agreement. Spanish FA sacks Vilda as women's manager. And we have Anthony Joshua wants Tyson Fury fight in Africa, and we would also love for that to happen. You can find more details at the back page. Man City to target $120 million rated Brighton star for Haaland. More details can be found on page 3. Milan leaves Chukwueze in Champions League squad. More details can be found on page 6. Henderson denies earning £700,000 per week at his Arabian club. Now you can find more details inside the paper, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Rachel, I'm afraid that's how far we can go. Thank you so much for that.
Always a pleasure, Sally.
Thank you to our viewers and to our supporters. And as you await the judgment, please try to be peaceful. Try to maintain peace as much as you can and avoid trouble or anything that will get you in trouble. Until we come in again tomorrow, to have a blessed day ahead.